The massive ships appeared without warning. They hung in Earth's sky like dark clouds, blocking out the sun over major cities. Each vessel was the size of a small country, made of some kind of crystal that sparkled in the sunlight. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the command center deep under the Rocky Mountains. She watched the screens showing the alien fleet. Her face was calm, but her hands were steady as she typed commands into her computer. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission," said Lieutenant Parker, his voice shaking slightly. "Put it through," Elena said. The main screen filled with the image of an alien creature. It looked like living crystal, with sharp edges and glowing blue light where eyes might be. When it spoke, its voice sounded like breaking glass. "Humans of Earth," the creature said. "I am Commander Vexithera of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species has been marked for removal. You are weak organic life forms that do not deserve to exist in our galaxy." Elena listened carefully. She had heard similar words before, in recordings from other planets. "We have destroyed 17 civilizations before you," the alien continued. "We do not simply kill. We erase completely. When we are done, no one will remember your species ever existed. You have 72 of your hours to send us all your history and culture. Then you will be deleted from existence." The transmission ended. Around the command center, people looked scared. Some were crying. Others just stared at the screens in shock. Elena stood up slowly. She walked to a special console that had been locked for 70 years. Her fingerprint opened it. Inside was a single red button labeled Forgotten Echo. "Ma'am?" Lieutenant Parker asked. "What are your orders?" Elena looked around the room at her team. These people had trained their whole lives for this moment. Their parents and grandparents had also trained for this day. "Activate Protocol Forgotten Echo," she said quietly. Parker's eyes went wide. He had heard stories about this protocol, but he never thought it was real. "Are you sure, ma'am?" "I'm sure," Elena said. She pressed the red button. All across Earth, hidden devices began to wake up. They had been sleeping under cities, in mountains, even on the ocean floor. For 70 years they had waited for this signal. In the sky above, the Zephyrian ships began their attack. Beams of purple light shot down from the vessels, hitting major cities. New York, London, Tokyo, and dozens of other cities exploded in bright flashes. Commander Vexithera watched from his command ship. This was always the easy part. The humans would panic now. They would run and hide and beg for mercy. In a few days it would be over. But something was wrong. The ship's sensors showed something strange. The cities they had just destroyed were empty. Not just empty of people, but completely empty. No bodies, no debris, nothing. "Report," Vexithera ordered. "Sir, we hit the targets perfectly, but the destruction patterns don't match organic settlements. It's like we destroyed empty buildings," his officer said, confusion in its crystal voice. Back in the command center, Elena smiled for the first time in hours. Phase 1 complete. The holograms worked perfectly. Lieutenant Parker stared at her. "Holograms? The cities they just attacked were fake," Elena explained. "We moved everyone underground 5 years ago. What they destroyed were just light projections." On another screen, Parker could see the real cities. They were hidden deep underground, connected by tunnels that stretched across continents. Billions of people were safe in these hidden places. "But ma'am, how did we know they were coming?" Parker asked. Elena walked to another console. She pressed a few buttons, and the screen showed star maps with dates and locations marked in red. "They've been attacking human colonies for 20 years, she said. "Every time they hit one of our outer worlds, we learned something new about them. We studied their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses." She pointed to different marks on the map. "Here. They destroyed the mining station on Kepler 442b. We learned about their energy weapons. Here they wiped out the research base on Wolf 359. We discovered how their ships work. And here, She pointed to a recent mark. They eliminated our colony on Proxima Centauri. That's when we learned their biggest secret. What secret? Parker asked. Elena's smile became cold. They're not as smart as they think they are. Their entire species shares one mind. They all think the same thoughts, make the same decisions. It makes them powerful, but it also makes them predictable. Alarms began ringing in the command center. On the screens, they could see Zephyrian ships moving into attack formation again. "Ma'am, they're preparing for another bombardment," an officer reported. "Let them," Elena said calmly. "It's time for Phase 2. She opened another panel and revealed more controls. "Send the signal to all hidden bases. Begin Operation Mirror Strike." Around the world, hidden launch sites opened. From underground silos, from fake mountains, from the ocean floor, human ships began to rise. These ships looked small compared to the giant Zephyrian vessels, but there were thousands of them. Commander Vex Thara watched the human ships emerge. He was confused but not worried. These primitive vessels could not possibly threaten his mighty fleet. "Prepare to destroy the human ships," he ordered. But as his weapons charged up, something impossible happened. The human ships simply vanished. One moment they were there, the next moment they were gone. "Where did they go?" Vexithara demanded. "Sir, they just disappeared from our sensors," his officer replied. "Find them!" But the human ships were already behind the Zephyrian fleet, using technology the aliens had never seen before. Human scientists had been working for decades to develop ways to hide from Zephyrian sensors. Elena watched the tactical display. The human ships were in perfect position. "All ships," she said into her communications device. "You are weapons-free. Show them what humans can do." The first human weapons hit the Zephyrian ships without warning. Captain Marcus Chen watched from the bridge of his ship, the Earth's Fury, as strange blue energy beams struck the crystal vessels. The effect was immediate and shocking. Where the beams hit, the Zephyrian ships began to crack. The crystal hulls that had seemed so strong started breaking apart like glass. "Direct hit on enemy flagship," reported Chen's weapons officer. "Their shields are down 30%. Commander Vexithara felt his ship shake. This was impossible. No organic species had ever damaged a Zephyrian vessel. Their crystal armor was supposed to be unbreakable. "How are they hurting us?" he demanded. "Sir, their weapons are using some kind of sound wave," his science officer replied. "The frequency matches our neural patterns. It's disrupting our collective consciousness." Vexithara felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrians had been unstoppable. They shared one mind across their entire species, making them perfectly coordinated in battle. But now that same shared mind was being attacked. On Earth, Elena watched the battle unfold. The human ships were faster and more maneuverable than the giant Zephyrian vessels. They darted between the enemy ships like angry wasps, striking and then disappearing. "Ma'am, the enemy is trying to use their neural dampening field," Lieutenant Parker reported. "They're attempting to shut down human brain activity across the planet." Elena nodded. "Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted them to do." The Zephyrian ships began broadcasting a powerful energy field designed to make organic minds go to sleep. They had used this weapon on every planet they conquered. It should have made every human on Earth fall unconscious within minutes. But instead of falling asleep, something amazing happened to the humans. Every person on the planet suddenly felt their mind expand. Hidden computer chips that had been implanted in their brains years ago came online. The neural dampening field, instead of shutting down human minds, activated the chips. Suddenly, every human could access the collective archive, a vast database of knowledge that had been building for decades. "The neural links are active," Elena said, her voice filled with satisfaction. "All humans now have access to everything we know about the Zephyrians." In the underground cities, People who had been ordinary farmers and teachers suddenly understood advanced space technology. Children knew how to repair starships. Elderly people could calculate complex battle strategies in their heads. The shared knowledge flowed through every human mind. They learned about Zephyrian weaknesses, about their technology, about their history. Most importantly, they learned about the fatal flaw in Zephyrian biology. Captain Chen felt the knowledge flood into his mind. Now he understood exactly how to hurt the crystal aliens. All ships switch to resonance frequency 774. Target their neural cores. The human ships changed their attack pattern. Instead of trying to break through the Zephyrian armor, they aimed for specific points on each vessel, the places where the aliens' shared consciousness was strongest. The new weapons were devastating. Zephyrian ships began breaking apart from the inside. Their crews couldn't think clearly as the resonance waves shattered their collective mind. "Sir, we're losing ships," Vexithera's officer reported. "The humans somehow know exactly where to hit us." Vexithera tried to think, but the resonance attacks were making it difficult. The shared Zephyrian consciousness was fragmenting. For the first time in his life, he felt alone in his own mind. "How is this possible?" he asked. "These are primitive organics. They shouldn't even understand our technology." On his main screen, a new image appeared. It was Dr. Elena Vasquez calling from Earth. "Commander Vexithara," Elena said calmly, "I think we need to talk." "You will surrender now," Vexithara said, but his voice lacked confidence. Elena shook her head. "No, I don't think we will. You see, you made a big mistake. You thought we were like all the other species you've destroyed. But we're not." She gestured to someone off-screen, and new images appeared showing Zephyrian ships being destroyed all across the galaxy. "While you were attacking Earth, human fleets were attacking your colonies," Elena continued. "Right now, 17 of your star systems are under attack. We've been planning this for 20 years. Vexithara stared at the images. Human ships were everywhere, striking at Zephyrian worlds with precise coordination. How had they managed to spread across the galaxy without being detected? "Impossible," he whispered. "Our intelligence networks would have spotted your ships." Elena smiled. "Your intelligence networks did spot our ships. They just didn't recognize them. We've been disguised as traders, refugees, and diplomatic missions for decades. Every Zephyrian world has human observers living on it." The truth was devastating. The Zephyrians had been so confident in their superiority that they never suspected the small organic ships visiting their worlds were actually human scouts gathering intelligence. "You've been studying us," Vexithara realized. "Every destroyed colony taught us something new," Elena said. "Every attack you made gave us more information about your technology, your tactics, your biology. We learned that your species sacrificed individual thought for collective power. That made you strong, but it also made you predictable." On the tactical displays, more Zephyrian ships were falling. The human forces seemed to anticipate every move the crystal aliens made. "You see, Commander, individual creativity is something your species gave up long ago," Elena continued. "But humans never stop thinking of new ways to solve problems. While you were following the same attack patterns you've used for 3,000 years, we were developing new strategies, new weapons, new technologies." Vexithara felt his ship shake again as human weapons found their mark. Half his fleet was already destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships were scattered and confused, unable to coordinate properly as their shared consciousness continued to fragment. "What do you want?" he asked. Elena's expression became cold. "We want to make sure no one ever has to suffer the way we have. No more destroyed colonies. No more erased civilizations. No more Zephyrian empire." "You cannot destroy us all," Vexithara said. "We span 17 star systems." "Actually, we can," Elena replied. "And we will." But we're not going to just kill you, Commander. We're going to do to you what you've done to so many others. We're going to make it so you never existed." The transmission ended. Vexithara stared at the blank screen, trying to understand what the human meant. How could anyone make a civilization never exist? He was about to find out. 3 weeks after the invasion began, Commander Vexithara stood in what remained of his command center. More than half his fleet was gone. The others were badly damaged and scattered across Earth's solar system. But the real shock was the reports coming from Zephyrian space. Human ships had appeared everywhere at once, striking at colonies that should have been impossible to reach without being detected years in advance. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Zarion system," his communications officer reported. "The last message said human ships appeared from nowhere and began attacking our neural relay stations." Vexithara felt sick. The neural relay stations were how the Zephyrian collective consciousness stayed connected across the galaxy. Without them, different parts of their empire couldn't share thoughts or coordinate actions. "What about the Helios colonies?" he asked. "Also under attack. The humans seem to know exactly where to hit us to cause maximum damage." Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared on the screen again. This time, she was calling from a human ship that had somehow gotten close to Vexithara's flagship without being detected. "Hello again, Commander," she said. "I thought you'd like an update on how the war is going." "This is impossible," Vexithara said. "How did you get ships across the galaxy so quickly?" "We didn't," Elena explained. "They were already there. For the past 20 years, every time you destroyed one of our colonies, the survivors didn't just die. Some of them escaped. We made sure of that." The screen showed images of human refugees arriving at various Zephyrian worlds. They looked beaten and defeated, asking for asylum or offering to work as servants. "Your people took them in because you thought broken humans were harmless," Elena continued. "But those refugees were actually our advanced scouts. They studied your colonies, mapped your defenses, and waited for this day." Vexithara realized the horrible truth. The Zephyrians had been infiltrated from within for decades. Every destroyed human colony had actually been a way to place human agents throughout Zephyrian space. "You used our attacks against us," he said. "Every destroyed world gave us intelligence and placed our people closer to your core systems," Elena confirmed. "Your own cruelty became the weapon we used against you." On his tactical display, Vexithara could see human ships moving with perfect coordination. They attacked in patterns that seemed to anticipate every Zephyrian response. "How are you coordinating across such distances?" he asked. "Even we cannot manage real-time communication across the galaxy." Elena smiled. "Because you're thinking like Zephyrians. You rely on your collective consciousness, so you assume we need something similar. But humans work differently. We don't need to share one mind to work together." She gestured, and the screen showed human commanders on different ships across the galaxy. They were all making independent decisions, but somehow their actions fit together perfectly. Each human commander has the same training, the same goals, and the same information, Elena explained. They can make decisions on their own that support the overall plan. We call it coordinated independence. Captain Sarah Kim's voice came over the communication channel from the other side of the galaxy. "Elena, this is Sarah. We've taken the Zephyrian home system, beginning Phase 2 of Operation Tabula Rasa." Vexithara had never heard of Operation Tabula Rasa, but the name filled him with dread. In the old human language, tabula rasa meant blank slate, wiping something clean. "What is Operation Tabula Rasa?" he demanded. Elena's expression became serious. "It's how we're going to make sure your empire never hurts anyone again. You see, Commander, we've learned something interesting about your species. Your collective consciousness doesn't just connect your minds, it connects your entire existence to your database networks." She pressed some controls, and the screen showed Zephyrian computer systems across the galaxy. Everything your species is, everything you've ever done, everything you remember, it's all stored in quantum databases. Your thoughts, your memories, your history, even your physical forms, all of it exists as information in your networks. Vexithara felt fear growing in what remained of his shared consciousness. You cannot access our quantum cores. They are protected by encryption that would take millions of years to break. You're right, Elena said. We can't break your encryption, but we don't need to. You see, 20 years ago, when you destroyed our research station on Wolf 359, you made a mistake. You captured some of our scientists alive to study them. The screen showed images of humans in Zephyrian laboratory facilities. Those scientists had been working on quantum archaeology, the ability to reconstruct and manipulate information that has been deleted or lost. While your people were studying their bodies, the scientists were studying your quantum systems from the inside. Vexthara's worst fears were becoming real. They learned how our networks function. More than that, they learned how to write viruses that could spread through your quantum cores, viruses that don't just delete information, they make it so the information never existed in the first place. Elena pressed another control. Across the galaxy, hidden programs that had been sleeping in Zephyrian computers for 20 years began to wake up. The viruses have been spreading through your networks for 2 decades, Elena said. Every time you connected to a system that had been contaminated, you carried the infection further. By now, every Zephyrian computer in the galaxy is infected. Warning alarms began ringing on Vexithara's ship. His officers looked confused as their computer systems started behaving strangely. "Sir, the quantum cores are acting strangely," his science officer reported. "They seem to be forgetting things." On planets across Zephyrian space, strange things were happening. Historical records were becoming blank. Cultural databases were emptying themselves. Even worse, some Zephyrians were beginning to forget who they were. "The process has begun," Elena said quietly. "The quantum viruses are working backward through your databases, erasing your history year by year. First, you'll lose records of recent events. Then, older history will disappear. Eventually, the viruses will erase the quantum patterns that define your species itself." Vexithara tried to access his ship's historical records, but found huge gaps where information should have been. The last 100 years of Zephyrian history were simply gone. "You're deleting us from existence," he whispered. "The same thing you've done to dozens of other species," Elena replied. "But we're being more thorough than you ever were. When we're done, it won't just be that no one remembers the Zephyrian Empire. The universe itself will forget you ever existed." Vexithara felt his own memories beginning to fade. He couldn't remember the names of some of his officers. The history of his people was becoming a blank space in his mind. "Please," he said, "we can surrender. We can change." Elena shook her head. "I'm sorry, Commander, but you made this choice when you decided to erase other civilizations. Now you'll experience what they did." The transmission ended. Vexithara looked around his bridge and realized he couldn't remember why he was here or what his mission was supposed to be. Something important was happening, but he couldn't recall what it was. Across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire was forgetting itself out of existence. Captain Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of her ship, the Memory Keeper, watching the Zephyrian home world through the view screen. The crystal cities that had stood for thousands of years were becoming transparent, like ghosts fading in the morning light. "Status report," she ordered. "Ma'am, the quantum viruses have reached 70% integration in their core systems," reported her science officer. "Their collective consciousness is fragmenting rapidly. Most Zephyrians can no longer remember their own names." Sarah nodded grimly. Operation Tabula Rasa was working exactly as planned, but watching an entire civilization fade from existence was still disturbing, even when that civilization had committed genocide against dozens of other species. On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the operation from her command center. Multiple screens showed the progress of the quantum deletion across all 17 Zephyrian star systems. The process was moving faster than expected. "Elena, this is Captain Chen," came a voice over the communication system. "We have a problem at the Nexus 7 system." Elena frowned. "What kind of problem, Marcus?" "Some of the Zephyrians are trying to escape. They've loaded themselves into emergency pods and are heading for the Galactic Rim. If they get away, they could restart their empire somewhere else." Elena's face hardened. This was exactly what they had planned for. "Negative, Marcus. No Zephyrian vessel leaves their territory. Activate the perimeter protocol." Across the galaxy, hidden human ships that had been waiting at the edges of Zephyrian space came online. For months, these vessels had been positioned like a net around the entire empire, waiting for exactly this moment. The fleeing Zephyrian ships found themselves surrounded by human forces that seemed to appear from empty space, but these weren't normal attack ships. They carried special weapons designed for Operation Tabula Rasa. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander. This is..." The Zephyrian communication cut off as the alien commander forgot what they were trying to say. The human ships opened fire, but not with conventional weapons. They launched clouds of nanobots, tiny machines that swarmed over the Zephyrian escape pods and began eating through the hulls. But the nanobots weren't just destroying the ships. They were equipped with quantum scanners that recorded the exact molecular structure of everything Zephyrian they touched. As they consumed the alien vessels, they transmitted the data back to human computers. "Why are you recording us as you kill us?" asked one of the few Zephyrians who could still speak coherently. Captain Kim answered from her ship near the homeworld. "Because we need to know exactly what we're erasing. We can't risk leaving any trace of your species behind, but we also need to make sure we don't accidentally delete anything that belongs to the civilizations you conquered." The truth was more complex than Kim explained. Human scientists had discovered that the Zephyrians had absorbed technology, art, and even genetic material from the species they had destroyed. The quantum viruses needed to carefully separate what was originally Zephyrian from what had been stolen from other civilizations. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched as the complex algorithms sorted through thousands of years of Zephyrian history. The computers identified which technologies had been developed by the Zephyrians themselves and which had been stolen from conquered worlds. "Elena, we're finding something interesting," reported Dr. James Park, the head of the quantum archaeology team. "The Zephyrians didn't just steal technology. They absorbed entire libraries of art, music, and literature from destroyed civilizations." Elena looked at the data streaming across her screen. Hidden within Zephyrian databases were the complete cultural records of dozens of extinct species, poems, songs, stories, and historical records that had been thought lost forever. "Extract everything that belongs to the conquered species," Elena ordered. "We'll restore it to the galaxy after the Zephyrians are gone." This was the most delicate part of the operation. The quantum viruses had to erase all traces of Zephyrian existence while preserving the cultural heritage of their victims. It was like performing surgery with tools made of light, cutting out a cancer while leaving healthy tissue untouched. On the Zephyrian homeworld, the few remaining aliens wandered through their crystal cities like sleepwalkers. They could no longer remember their purpose or their history. Some sat in what had been government buildings, staring at computers that showed only blank screens. Commander Vexithara, though he no longer remembered that name, stood in his ship, looking at controls he couldn't understand. His crew had scattered to different parts of the vessel, each one lost and confused. "Sir," said a Zephyrian who might once have been his science officer, "I think something is wrong, but I can't remember what." Vexathara tried to respond, but he couldn't remember how language worked. The concepts of words and meaning were fading from his mind, along with everything else. On human ships throughout the galaxy, the final phase of Operation Tabula Rasa began. The quantum viruses had finished their backward journey through Zephyrian databases. Now they would erase the fundamental quantum patterns that defined Zephyrian existence itself. "All ships, prepare for final deletion," Elena announced. "In 60 seconds, we will complete the erasure of the Zephyrian species from all levels of reality." Captain Sarah Kim watched her countdown timer. Around the Zephyrian homeworld, the crystal structures were now barely visible. The aliens themselves were becoming translucent, their molecular patterns starting to destabilize. 30 seconds, announced the computer. Some of the human crew members looked uncomfortable. They were about to do something that had never been done before, completely erase an intelligent species from existence. Even though the Zephyrians were monsters who had committed genocide, it felt like crossing a line that should never be crossed. 10 seconds. Elena closed her eyes. She thought about all the worlds the Zephyrians had destroyed, all the civilizations that had been erased without mercy. This was justice for billions of dead beings who would never have the chance to seek their own revenge. Execute final deletion. Across 17 star systems, the quantum viruses completed their work. The last traces of Zephyrian existence, their bodies, their ships, their cities, their very genetic patterns, were removed from reality. The effect was immediate and total. Where moments before there had been an interstellar empire, now there was nothing. Not empty space, but actual nothingness where the concept of Zephyrian existence could not form in any mind. "Elena," called Captain Kim over the communication system. "It worked. They're completely gone." Elena opened her eyes and looked at her displays. The star charts showing Zephyrian territory were blank, not destroyed, but blank, as if nothing had ever been there. "Phase 1 complete," Elena said quietly. "Begin Phase 2. Restore the lost civilizations." Now came the most important part of the operation. Using the cultural data they had extracted from Zephyrian databases, human computers began reconstructing the histories and societies that had been erased by the Crystal Empire. Across the galaxy, worlds that had been empty for centuries suddenly showed signs of thriving civilizations again. Species that had been extinct for millennia were restored to life. Technologies and art forms that had been lost forever reappeared in museums and libraries. The universe was healing from wounds that no one would ever remember being inflicted. 6 months had passed since the day that never happened. Dr. Elena Vasquez walked through the restored Andorian archives on the planet Kepler 442b, reading historical records that showed thousands of years of unbroken civilization. The blue-skinned Andorians working in the archives smiled and nodded at her as she passed. They believed humans were simply visiting scholars from a friendly species. None of them remembered that their world had been destroyed by crystal aliens because those aliens had never existed. "Dr. Vasquez," called Kira Chanvel, the head archivist, "thank you for your help with our ancient text translations. Your knowledge of old galactic languages is impressive." Elena smiled back. "I'm happy to help preserve such important cultural heritage." She didn't mention that these ancient texts had been recreated from data extracted from Zephyrian databases during their deletion. As far as the galaxy was concerned, Andorian civilization had never been interrupted. Elena's communication device buzzed quietly. It was a message from Admiral Marcus Chen, who was now overseeing human operations across the galaxy. "Elena, we have the final report on the restoration project. All 23 civilizations have been successfully rebuilt. The galaxy is now as it should have been if the incident had never occurred." Elena typed back a quick reply. Any problems with the integration? None. Reality has accepted the changes completely. The restored civilizations have histories going back millennia. Their genetics, their cultures, their technologies, everything is exactly as it would have been if they had developed naturally. Elena nodded to herself. The quantum archaeology team had done excellent work. They had not just brought back the destroyed civilizations, but had calculated how those societies would have evolved over the centuries if they had never been interrupted. She left the archive and walked to the transport station. A sleek vessel waited to take her to her next destination, a meeting of the United Species Council on the neutral world of Harmony Station. The irony was not lost on her. The United Species Council believed it had formed naturally through peaceful first contacts and diplomatic negotiations. The member species thought they had come together out of mutual respect and shared goals. None of them remembered the terror and chaos that had existed before. They didn't know about destroyed worlds, erased histories, or a crystal empire that had ruled through fear. In this new timeline, the galaxy had always been a place of cooperation and growth. Elena took her seat in the council chambers. Representatives from dozens of species were present. Andorians with their blue skin, the plant-like Sylvani, the energy beings from the Proxima system, and many others. All of them were species that had been extinct 6 months ago. The council recognizes Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth, announced the council leader, a dignified being from the Vega system. Elena stood up. She was here in her official role as humanity's representative, but her real purpose was different. She was making sure the restored civilizations were integrating properly into galactic society. "Thank you, Council Leader Telvaris," Elena said. "Earth wishes to renew our commitment to the galactic protection protocols. We believe it's important to maintain monitoring systems that can detect potential threats to galactic peace." The other ambassadors nodded in agreement. This seemed like a reasonable proposal from a species known for their careful planning and technological skills. What they didn't know was that the monitoring systems Elena was talking about were actually early warning networks designed to detect any future threats, like the Zephyrians. Hidden throughout the galaxy were human observation posts, quantum listening devices, and automated defense systems. After the council meeting, Elena met privately with Captain Sarah Kim in a secure room on Harmony Station. "How are our people adjusting to their new roles?" Elena asked. Sarah consulted her datapad. "All human agents have successfully integrated into their assigned positions. We now have observers on every major world in the galaxy. Most of them are working as scientists, teachers, or trade representatives. The locals see them as helpful humans contributing to society." Elena looked out the window at the busy space station. Ships from dozens of worlds came and went, carrying trade goods and passengers. It was a peaceful scene that would have been impossible under Zephyrian rule. "Any signs of temporal anomalies or memory bleeding?" Elena asked. "None detected. The quantum deletion was complete. There are no traces of the previous timeline in anyone's memory except our own people." Elena nodded. The human agents scattered across the galaxy were the only ones who remembered the original timeline. They carried the burden of knowing about the war that never happened and the empire that never existed. "What about the Never Was archive?" Elena asked. Sarah's expression became serious. "Sealed and secured. Only 12 people in the galaxy have access codes, and all of them are humans. The complete record of Zephyrian history is preserved just in case we need to study it in the future." The Never Was archive was humanity's insurance policy. If another species like the Zephyrians ever appeared, human scientists would be able to study the preserved records and develop countermeasures. It was a dark library containing the history of a civilization that had never existed. Elena's communicator chimed. It was a message from Dr. James Park on Earth. "Elena, We've detected quantum signatures matching extinct civilization patterns in the Outer Rim. Possible survivors of pre-Zephyrian erasures? Elena felt her pulse quicken. The quantum viruses had been designed to restore civilizations destroyed by the Zephyrians, but they had only restored species whose records were found in Zephyrian databases. There might be other civilizations that had been erased so completely that even the Zephyrians had no record of them. Sarah, we need to investigate the Outer Rim immediately, Elena said. There may be more civilizations we can restore. As they prepared to leave Harmony Station, Elena looked back at the council chambers, where representatives of restored species continued their peaceful discussions. They were living proof that sometimes the greatest victory was one that erased itself from memory. She thought about the final entry in her personal log, the one that would never be shared with anyone outside the human intelligence network. The war is over. The enemy never existed. The galaxy is at peace, and no one will ever know how close we came to losing everything. Humanity stands guard in the shadows, protecting civilizations that don't know they need protection. We are the watchers who remember what others have forgotten. We are the guardians of a peace that was won in a war that never happened. Elena walked toward her ship, carrying the weight of memories that belonged to a timeline that had been erased. Around her, the galaxy continued its peaceful existence, unaware that it had been saved by a species that specialized in making sure its greatest victories were never remembered. The greatest threat to galactic civilization had been eliminated so completely that the universe itself had forgotten it ever existed. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, human ships continued their eternal watch, ready to face threats that others would never see coming. Peace had been achieved through the ultimate act of war, making the enemy never exist. It was a victory that could never be celebrated, because no one would ever know there had been a battle to win.